So it's been around 5 years since we've seen a main entry from the Elder Scrolls series, well, unless you count this abomination. And in past videos I've talked about the elements of Elder Scrolls design that I would like to have in a sequel. As I imagine from what Todd has said about how the stuff they want to do with Elder Scrolls 6 they don't even have the technology for, so it will probably have a long and enduring development cycle, and a long enduring development cycle means that old Todd the Toddler is going to be high on his toes to make sure the vision of the game will stay true throughout the 4 or so years of physical development. Which means I'll be here for around 4 or so years, high on my toes, complaining about what I didn't like about Oblivion and Skyrim, and harping on why Morrowind is just the best damn game to touch the earth, and oh boy, I bet you're excited. And that all starts with the way the game conveys its deep trench of lore to you, how it conveys the true uniqueness of the Elder Scrolls setting to you, and how it subconsciously implores you to immerse yourself within the game's melting pot of politics, fiction, religion, the sciences of its universe including magical physics and biology, and the physical features of the world itself. So let's get started. The Elder Scrolls setting is always described as a very fantastical setting, one that exists with dragons, skeletons, and angry Viking people that can shout people off of things. While it is a fantasy setting, I would consider it in the realm of very realistic fantasy, like Ed Greenwood's Forgotten Realms setting, instead of something like Warcraft or Narnia, and that all starts with the art style. One thing that I find very charming about all the Elder Scrolls games is how the art style is created to specifically look mundane and normal, even though we've never really seen anything like it since it's a fantasy setting. Games, because they cannot be performed in live action, have the ability to stroke our 5 senses with color palettes, cell shading, and stylization, and Elder Scrolls uses none of this to its advantage. A perfect example of what I'm talking about would be the Dwemer ruins of that word. If you're unaware, the Dwemer, also known as dwarves in the Elder Scrolls setting, went missing sometime in the First Era due to unknown causes. Despite their early disappearances from Tamriel, you can still find a lot of documentation and ruins of their architectural works, such as that word. And it may not be what you expect. The setting of Warcraft or Dragon Age has taught me that dwarves are short, stumpy, bearded people who live in underground iron forges and gold-plated kingdoms. This has been so burned into my mind that when I first started getting into Elder Scrolls, I always thought that during the First Era there were a bunch of short, stumpy, bearded people who lived underground forging iron stuff like Warcraft. In Elder Scrolls, this is completely false. Elder Scrolls dwarves look nothing like how they are usually portrayed in fantasy. They resemble a more elven race. They kinda look like this, and that makes sense within the setting because they were remnants of early Altmer. They also didn't reside in huge kingdoms underground and melted and forged iron stuff. When the dwarven people were still around, they were known for their extreme technological advances, city planning, science, math, the magical arts, and academia. They played a role in Morrowind's most mysterious event, one which withholds many different secondary accounts, the Battle of Red Mountain. Dwarves in Elder Scrolls do not derive from generic fantasy. They don't look like anything special as seen here, keeping with looking mundane in accordance to everything else you see. Like Silt Striders for another example. While I've never seen anything that even resembles a Silt Strider, when I first played Morrowind I didn't really give it any notice until I got really close to it. It faded into the rest of the art and architecture that my brain was processing at the moment, and when I saw the Silt Strider, it looked like it fit with that setting. It looked like a common visual mundanity of life in Vardenfell, something that was just always there. And the visual aspect of the setting is just one part of the entire pot. We've seen this with every Elder Scrolls game to exist. Forests look like any forest you would see on Earth, mountains form and look how mountains usually form and look, cliff racers and guars look like the dinosaurs that once roamed Earth millions of years ago, the dragons that roamed during the events of Skyrim don't look like anything outworldly, they look like reptiles. Everything about the visual aspect of Elder Scrolls games is very down to earth, making the believability and immersion of the setting more vivid. The laws of science, physics, biology, as well as the physical features of the world, while remarkably similar to ours in most respects, still follow their own rules. What's so special about the Elder Scrolls setting is the fact that it knows it's an entire separate universe with its own laws, functions, and mysteries. It features claims and arguments by scholars that exist within the setting, and counterclaims and counter-arguments by others, all that are written in books that you find in the games, arguing about the world's history and science. There are many books in the game that detail the setting's mythology, like the Seven Saints, the Tribunal, the Dragonborn, and so on. In libraries, you can find the writings that detail the landscape's flora and creatures. No aspect of the universe doesn't get touched on at least once. It's a living, breathing world filled with many different beliefs on how it functions and how it should be lived in. This includes political views, and in the world of 2017, there is not a better time to discuss politics. The politics scene in Elder Scrolls, well, at least Morrowind, are very complicated to deal with because no one is inherently right or wrong. They follow what they believe in. In Morrowind, there are the three great houses, the East Empire Company, the Fighters Guild, the Imperial Cult, the Imperial Legion, the Mages Guild, the Thieves Guild, the four Ashlander tribes, the Morag Tong, the Tribunal Temple, the three vampire clans if you become a vampire. All of these you have the option of joining and acclimating yourself with, each supporting a different overall character archetype, personality, and political view. As you start getting deeper into their internal and external struggles, their conflicts with outside groups and such, the political and, in some cases, religious position of your character takes its place and your story within the world of Morrowind forms into a very clear mold, ready for you to fill it up with your tales and adventures. So what does this all have to do with the title of the video, Elder Scrolls 6? Well, this is going to be sort of a helpless plea to Bethesda. For the past 5 years, I've been watching their excellent craft, talent, and skill sort of go down the shitter. Elder Scrolls is important to all of us. It's important to gaming. It's supposed to liberate players from a predefined plotline and playstyle. It gives the opportunity to explore a whole other setting than our own, by our own volition, and is supposed to do all it can to immerse you in the setting. However, in my opinion, lately that strength of the Elder Scrolls has not been used to its full potential at all. Skyrim is a game with a linear plotline, guided by an arrow. Anything that the player does outside of the main quest is completely decentralized from the plot, and most of the time adds nothing to the setting or the state of the world's politics or much of anything else. Hell, the main faction conflicts in Skyrim are completely separate from the main story and serve as just another side quest chain that the Elder Scrolls is now somehow famous for. Compare this with Morrowind. Morrowind is a game that, when you first start, there's not really any plot that has started yet other than your own. You have the option to not start the main plot by ignoring, or God forbid, killing, Caius Casades, your blade supervisor. Then your own plot will take hold. But if you do start the foretelling of your own prophecy, you do it at your own pace, unfolding it your way. It's also a bit of a challenge. Each group, to accept you as the divine reincarnation of Indorel Nerevar, requires something of you. They require for you to have somewhat of a reputation and to also know your stuff, as well as perform some kind of ritual or proving of oneself. In Morrowind, you study the many accounts of who Indorel Nerevar was, and particularly how he died. According to Western authors, he died from his wounds in Red Mountain after fighting the Sixth House. According to the Ashlanders, it was the Tribunal that killed him and became the three god kings of Morrowind. Most everything you do have to do with the complicated politics of the world, which binds in with the overall story of Morrowind. Joining the temple, for example, is an act you don't necessarily have to do, but if you do, then you have to find the sites of the Seven Saints in a pilgrimage. But in order to find the seven sites, you must study the literature, the fiction, and the religion written by temple scholars. In order to know what must be gifted to the saint site, you must know the ingredients to make the item, or maybe where they're found, or the plant life that can be used to make a potion or the gift, and why it's being used as a gift in the first place, all painting the game's world in front of you. If you contract vampirism, then your only option other than succumbing to the many vampire clans and reading and speaking about their history, you'll have to go to the libraries and, in some cases, hunt for books and scrolls that detail methods of curing yourself, else you'll be hunted by most non-vampire civilizations, even unable to further their main plot until you do so. If you join the Fighters Guild, you'll soon learn about their conflict with the Thieves Guild, and if you're able to assassinate the three Thieves Guild bosses for the Fighters Guild, not only will the Thieves Guild lose their power within the setting, but you'll also gain reputation and acceptance within the Imperial Cult, the Mages Guild, and 2 out of the 3 great houses of Morrowind, of which you need acceptance from in order to complete the main quest. Everything is tied together. It's a coherent and well thought out setting, one that, like I said in the beginning, implores the player to immerse himself in the literature, the sciences, and the politics of the complicated, alien, yet enthralling and methodically realistic setting that the Elder Scrolls games set themselves in. Apart from near meaningless features, my only wish for Elder Scrolls 6 is for it to set the stage for political intrigue, religious conflicts, and a world of literature, conversation, and groups the player can align themselves with that can open up their view of the world, so they can act with the power they've gained throughout the hours they've spent with the game to change their world and achieve their prophecy. Thank you for watching.